Welcome to our podcast. I'm Tiffany Silva Herlin, a therapist dedicated to helping families heal. Today, we will be exploring the real story of a family who has walked the difficult path, but transformative path of residential treatment. In this 3-part series, we sit down with Rivka and Aiden, a family who's made the tough decision to send their child to residential treatment, Discovery Ranch, and want to share their story of healing and hope. We'll explore the decision to seek residential treatment, the experience inside the program, and life after treatment. You'll hear honest reflection from both Rivka and Aiden as they share the highs and the lows of the healing process. Whether you're a parent considering residential treatment, a professional in the field, or someone looking for hope in the midst of struggle, this series will offer real insight and support and inspiration. Please remember that this podcast is not a replacement for therapy. Please always seek a mental health professional for your situation. Let's dive in. Thank you guys so much for coming out and joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what was life like before you came to Discovery Ranch?
I'm Aiden. I guess my life was kind of chaotic before I went to Discovery Ranch, I guess. Everything before that before treatment was kind of a blur.
It's probably a really chaotic, like you said, part of your life and more, you were in crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say life before treatment is a continuum of crisis and drama and trauma. And we spent years of short-term care, all kinds of outpatient therapy cadences, if you will, all kinds of interventions. And then we just got to the point where we had exhausted all resources at home and within our family. And needed help from the outside. Like, we needed something different to keep Aiden and our family safe.
How did you know, like, it was time to move forward? Like, do you have any specifics?
The frequency and intensity of episodes and crises were getting so intense and so scary and unsafe that we ran out of options. We had utilized everything that's locally available to us, and we knew we now needed to explore something different. So we hired an education consultant. That did not go super smooth on the first round. We ended up in a program that was not the right fit. So within 36 hours, we knew, and we made a change, and hired a new ed consultant that was actually referred to us by that program. So they worked with us, acknowledging this was not a good fit. And hey, let's work with you to get to where your child does need to be. And from there, I would say we were shepherded by the most supportive team I could have hoped for, between the professionals that we worked with through the different programs we were at and our ed consultant. And then our family was amazing. So that network and that support structure, whether it was to support me as a parent, Aiden as the student, our other children as just kind of the siblings who were kind of stunned and having to go along this ride, we were really surrounded by a lot of support, love, care, and professionalism.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying that I think is important for our listeners to hear is that as a parent, you had tapped out all your resources. You no longer were able to provide the support and maybe even safety that Aiden needed at the time, right? It sounds like there were some safety issues. I think some parents get to the point where they feel like a failure, right? Like, oh, I failed my child. I didn't know how to help them. When really it sounds like this was above your scope, above anyone's scope as a parent, right? And you needed a village and this extra support to really offer him to find the right path of healing, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. And I think some of that failure comes later, because in the moment, if my kids have heard this once, they've heard this more than 100 times. I've done the best I can in every moment. Yeah. And so in the moment, my failure and my feelings couldn't even be contemplated because safety was a real concern.
You were in crisis.
So in the moment of crisis, you're just trying to get to a semblance of safety and stability. And again, in a family system, there's not only the child in crisis, there's also the rest of the family. There are other children, there's parents, there's like a whole system that's failing. And I would say that those feelings really come later. In the moment, it was about, where can I find a structure that can keep this child safe and alive? And then we will work out the other pieces as they come. And this is where having the right professionals in place is so critical, because you're in crisis. So it's really difficult to sift through your own stuff and figure out what's what. A friend of mine who was in a similar situation described it as being in a front-loaded washing machine. And she just felt like she was constantly in the washing machine. So she was never stopped enough to be able to see through. And it was really about getting Aiden to a place of, he is safe. There are a lot of people helping him right now. I could now look inward and then kind of worry about the other children and worry about myself. And so in the moment, failure, I don't recall that really settling in until probably week 2 or 3 after he was placed, right? In the decision making, there's a lot of interviews, there's a lot of phone calls, a lot of discussions happening, like, where are we going? And then you go, and then you have to make that transition. And initially, the program we went to wanted us there a lot. So his dad and I were alternating every other day, going in for a few hours. So to be part of the program that they asked us to be for. And so that was the first 3 weeks. And then we moved to Texas, and he was in a program for children with neurological issues. And so that was a whole thing in itself. Also extremely supportive, very focused on stabilizing him physically and psychiatrically. Therapy was part of every day immediately, but less so the primary focus, as much as stabilizing the child. And then once he graduated from there, then we were able to explore a residential treatment center, and that's where we ended up at Discovery Ranch.
You mentioned an educational consultant. To our listeners who don't know what that is, could you explain a little bit?
I'm sure that there's a professional
but in your own
PC description for that, but I would say that it's someone who meets us where we were at. So understood our needs, our family, our child, and knows a lot about many programs to help guide us to the programs we should look at. She always gave us 3 or 4 options at every step that we had to make a change, and was careful to not ever zero in on what she thought was the right answer. I really appreciated that. I will
like a middleman. Like they're just the middleman between you and the program. So they're the ones who will, like, I remember my mom used to, like, they usually reach out to the program first, and then they'll come to you, be like, think this is a good fit, and then so they go to the program, and they go to you. So literally a middleman between.
It allowed for us to not have to explore programs that weren't willing to work with us. So she vetted the programs, gave them his packet, and they had to come back with a preliminary, we're interested, before she would ever even present them to us. So I'm sure, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure that there were programs she had presented him to that maybe said, this is not for us, and so we never heard about it.
I'm sure we could ask. I bet there's a good list.
Well, it just made your job easier because you're in crisis, you're in trauma. He's, his safety's at risk, and you need to act fast. So instead of having to go and Google it and then weed through all of that, you had someone who's like, no, I'm in the industry. I go to all these programs. I have relationships with these programs, these people, these therapists. I know, and I can, give you, vet them for you, like you said.
I think it's also important to have the right education consultant. The very first one we worked with changed the narrative. So when we saw the forms that he had filled out, they were just untrue, right? So he had changed our circumstances, perhaps to make us a more appealing case to more programs. But that did not serve anybody, because as soon as we got there and they laid eyes on him and understood that this was not what was described to them, within 36 hours, we were back there discharging him. So it was a failure on his part in that we were honest. He had gotten to speak to Aiden's psychiatrist, Aiden's therapist, Aiden's school. I mean, there were hours and phone calls at 11 o'clock at night. We were all in and being fully transparent. But then what the program got was not true, and we never saw it. And so having an ed consultant who's going to meet you where you're at it's the only way to do this.
Yeah.
Understand the child and then be truthful and honest about it.
So you have to have a good working relationship, trusting relationship with
Yes.
them. Yeah, absolutely. And that goes with anyone that you work with in this industry, whether it's a therapist, a staff, like there needs to be trust. There needs to be that mutual working relationship to help everyone, like you said, create this system of support and healing.
So I would stress that the professionals in this industry are generally that way. I think the parents are likely the ones who struggle with that vulnerability the most, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where some of the failure comes in. That's where that exposure comes in. Like, oh my God, what are they going to think about me? Oh my God, am I a terrible parent? And you just have to do the right thing. And you have to force your support system to meet you where you're at. So that means that you have to tell them where you're at. And having sort of been in multiple programs and interacted with lots of different parents in these programs, I have observed that the most successful family systems to evolve out of the journey are the ones where everybody plugged in and everybody was truthful and honest. And there is shame, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There's owning our own stuff. There's bringing our whole selves, blemishes and all, to the process. But without that, what is the journey? And Aiden and I have observed families who sort of like cursory participation ends up with just that. It's a cursory at best result that is not sustainable.
Yeah, it's always a sad thing when, like, you see, like, especially kids you get close with in treatment. It's hard to see when you see, like, kids who really don't seem like they're graduating the program, and then, but the parents who just weren't really involved, they end up going to another program that they, like, it's not even like just a normal boarding school. It's like another actual program. It's just like, why? It's sad to watch, and it's sad to see. It's like, especially when they're a good friend, and yeah.
So the parents aren't as dedicated.
Yeah.
So you're saying
they're
that
like just waiting for them to age out until just send them program to program till they age out.
They just need a place for their kid.
Yeah.
They're not willing to engage. So from what I'm hearing from you, Aiden, is that the parents need to be involved.
Yeah.
Why?
I think it really it comes down to your parents sent you because it's what's best for you. Like, parents, they look out for what's best for you. So they didn't send you there because they just want to get rid of you. They sent you there because it's not safe for them, and you need it. But it doesn't mean that they don't want you, and it doesn't mean that they shouldn't want you anymore. They should really, like, their goal should be to reunite with you as soon as possible when you're ready. And so it's really important for the parents to be involved so they can see that change, they can see that progression, and be ready for when you come home.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm kind of jumping ahead. I actually want us to take a step back, but I would love to talk more about the parent and family interaction, and more involvement is the word I'm looking for in the program, because it's not just you need to heal, the whole system needs to heal, right?
Yeah.
I think it's also important to understand and to own that if a member of the system failed, odds are the system is failing.
Yeah.
And we have 4 children in our family system. The other 3 are thriving, and they were relatively innocuous teenage
I would say I'm
hoods.
thriving now.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
But we didn't have these obstacles with the other 3. However, I would own that our entire family has evolved in the process of Aiden's treatment, recognizing that we all benefited from the changes that we've made. And every one of us has. The other children, the children's relationships amongst each other, with themselves, with us as a couple. Like, it has been transformative for our entire family system. Because what family doesn't need to work on its communication skills and its behavioral cycles and
what roles they play and who gets stuck in the role and
right. And so much awareness and then transformation comes from that evolution that I would not trade for the world. I wish it had, of course, we all wish that it had been through a less traumatic vehicle, but Aiden has been the impetus for incredible growth and tremendous relationships within our family that likely would not have had the depth and the extension that they have today.
I love that you guys are willing to come on here and talk about your healing process, your growth, and that from a terrible crisis situation that was very traumatic for your family, you've all come together. You've brought your family together and grown. So you guys are already starting to point out that it's important to be vulnerable in treatment. So, which leads me to the question of, why did you want to come today and talk?
I think that there's a lot of conundrum about it, right? If you haven't seen the ranch, well, let's talk about Discovery Ranch. If you get on campus, you're going to experience, it's a spectacular space. There are live animals that are just so much part of the experience. The staff is unreal. I mean, every one of them is doing this because it's truly God's work. Like, it's their life mission to better the space of mental health for teenagers.
Also, who doesn't want to raise a calf? I mean,
who doesn't want to raise a calf?
Who doesn't want to work with a horse? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And I think when you experience the love and passion that is the essence of these programs, and then watch the care with which they provide that structure for the children, it's so incredibly antithetical to what is out there in the media. I think it's imperative to understand what is residential treatment and what does it look like? What is the goal? What does it look like? What's the structure within which it's provided? And there's so much misconception about it out there. But when you go there and experience it, you really feel that it's based in love, structure, and discipline. I wouldn't even go there. I think the word discipline has been so misused around the whole treatment center.
I think it's I think there's multiple definitions of discipline. But I think the definition you need to use is the discipline in the sense of like self-structure and like learning how to structure yourself, holding yourself accountable, because by the end that's the goal. You're holding yourself accountable to your own actions and you're structuring yourself, and that's the end goal. And I think that's kind of the discipline that you look for. It's not the discipline of you were bad. It's discipline of I did that. I gotta change my actions. And
so accountability is huge. Really what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked in this industry for a really long time, and that's a big piece, is making sure that not only are the students who come accountable, but also the staff and the therapist are held accountable as well.
And the family system. I can't stress that enough. It doesn't mean that you were a bad parent. It doesn't mean that you failed. But I think owning our stuff is critical, just as much for the parents as it is for the student and for the program itself. And yeah, the name of the game is accountability. That's exactly right, Aiden.
Yeah.
And what Aiden described earlier as kind of the kids whose parents just send them to the program and then just kind of wait it out and then maybe move them to another program and wait that out. That's what's missing, is accountability. It's participation. It's vulnerability. It's really plugging in and allowing yourself to identify, where do I need to improve? Where are my relationships lacking? Where's my communication broken? And then working it alongside your child. I'll plug that there's this book that I've read probably more than a handful of times called The Parallel Process, in which she breaks down the systems that are so critical and and foundational to all families and relationships, and how the healing works on both sides of the family, right? The child in the program, and then the family tangential to the program. And we were told to read that book, I want to say like in the first stop, like within the first few weeks. But throughout the program, throughout 30 months of this, I had gone back to it multiple times, and I've lent it out to people and just encouraged anyone who's in any family system to read it, because it's so important to understand how we affect others within our family.
Yeah. And I want to dive more into like, what was it like being in therapy? But let's save that for our next episode. Because that's such an important piece that you're talking about. And I've heard great things about that book as well.
Like, one of the things that, kind of on the topic of like when like kids who like complain to their parents, and then as someone who went through it, I mean, we're going to exaggerate as much as possible because we want to just get out without having to do work. So, I mean,
so you know what buttons to push when you're on a weekend phone call with your therapist.
I know my ins and outs.
So you're saying other kids know that too? Because I constantly, when I work with families coming in, I'm like always prepping parents. Like, just know that when you get on your first couple phone calls on the weekend to talk to your kid without, a therapist around, you're going to hear all different things. They're going to tug on your heartstrings.
Well, also, you got to think about it. Like, when we go to, one of the things like is, we're not, like, if we're going to treatment, that means we're good at manipulating, because we used our behavior to get what we wanted, and then we ended up getting exactly what we didn't want, which is treatment. I mean, like, that is, so you gotta think, like, when we get in those phone calls, we're gonna use that. We're gonna, like you said, pull on those heartstrings, like, because we're gonna try to manipulate more. And so I think it's honestly just, we're gonna try to use our superpower and see if we can get away with it again. So
I think we need to, if we can, just pull back a little bit and kind of talk about, because I know we touched on making the decision and really
I actually did want to go back.
Yeah. So our first inpatient experience was when Aiden was about to turn 11.
He had already turned 11.
Or maybe you were 11.
It was inpatient in May, and I turned 11 in April.
There you go. He had just turned 11, and it took us another 2 years to get to a place of, we need more help than just short-term hospital stays. So we had done several hospital stays during that 2-year period, each kind of precipitated by something different, always safety related, always safety centric, where we were in a crisis where we could no longer create any sense of stability and safety. So after doing that a few times, you start feeling like you're in a horrible cycle, right? I've spoken to countless number of parents who are like, the police just know our home, or they know our family, or right. And we were really lucky. We had an incredibly supportive county system. We came out of Baltimore County, where they just came through in incredible ways. They have a mental health unit that supplements any call related to mental health issues. And so we were extremely supported through those 2 years by the county system.
You also had therapists as well. He was seen weekly. Yeah.
No, not just weekly. In the peak of it, we were going 5 days a week to Kennedy Krieger. We were trying so hard to stay home, right? To keep him at home and to heal him within our family.
Because you don't want to leave, right?
He doesn't want to leave, and we don't want to have to send him away. Like, it feels like we're rejecting him. It feels like an ejection, and it's not, right? I can remember those feelings of, but I haven't exhausted every feeling yet, or I've got another day in me. If I have another day in me, then today is not the day. And so it wasn't until we had been in this cycle of, we were going to outpatient treatment every single day of the week. We had done multiple hospital stays ranging between, I think the longest was 3 weeks and the shortest was probably, so it was like 2 weeks, and maybe the shortest was like 5 or 6 days. And so we had done this. We had been to the ER numerous times. We were out of options, and recognizing that, and you just have to get to that point of what's the next option for safety, and then don't stay there, because once you acknowledge that there's a new step that's required for safety, keep going with that. You don't have time to harp on your own feelings, right? Because safety has to come before your feelings. So realizing that, it did take us 8 days from the realization to hiring the ed consultant, looking at the programs, making the decision, and then going. So on the 8th day, we left on like, I don't know, an ungodly flight. I think it was like at 6 a.m. And
did he go with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you know you were going?
I did indeed. Yeah.
We had family in town that week. It was September. My mom was staying at our house. My brother was staying at our house. There was a lot going on. We were celebrating the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, and the feeling was rejection. I would say that I felt horrible guilt for what my child was perceiving as rejection. In the spirit of what Aiden said before, manipulation was 100% his art. And I recall...
You agree? He's shaking his head, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I recall him, he's sobbing, his head is in my lap, and he's like, please don't make me leave. Like, please don't give up on me. But right, and he's crying. And
he's like honing into that, like, you're giving up on me feeling like that.
Yes.
Heartstrings.
And so
Yep,
I'd like to think that some of it was authentic. Going back to it, it is a sickening feeling to make the decision that tomorrow night my child will not sleep at home. And there's no way to evaluate how long it's going to take. Every child's going to be on their own journey. And I recall truly believing that this was a 6 to 8 week process. Like in my delirium, I thought, no big deal. We'll do this. And in about 6 to 8 weeks, he'll be home.
Well, can I just ask real quick, how long has he been struggling up to that point? Yeah.
Well, I mean, looking back, he was struggling for several years before even his first hospitalization, but I'll call the intensity was about 24 months. And so obviously you're not going to fix that in 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. That's one thing I constantly have to tell parents is like, how long has this been going on? They'll say years. And it's like, okay, well, it's not going to take 6 to 8 weeks for this to turn around, right? Like initially.
And I think, but again, be kind to yourself and your child.
Absolutely.
And try not to focus on how long this will take. There's no way to prescribe it. It's not a program that has a finite tenure, and once you complete it, you graduate and you return home and all is well. Every child's going to do this at their own pace. Every child's going to need any number of programs, or maybe one long one, or maybe one short one. I don't think anyone can tell you. And so if anyone's trying to sell you a finite timeline, it's probably, maybe it's based on some numbers and statistics, but you have to know that this is going to be your child's journey at their own pace. And
can't always control choice, right? And accountability. And
so that's one of the things we learned very early on is that the only person that any one of us can control is ourselves.
Yeah.
And I can't control what journey my child's going to take. I can only control myself. And the one thing that I have always committed to my children is I will never lie to them. And I never gave him a timeline. I did dread him not being there that night. Like I recall that sickening feeling of, what is that going to be like? Me not putting my child to bed and then forcing myself to just like gulp it down and move on, because you're a mom, you're a dad, you're a sibling, you're a caregiver, you're a grandma. It's hard. It's hard to accept that. And I think what you need to connect with is my child's needs are far more superior right now to my feelings. And if you can prioritize that and keep your eye on that ball, then you will just march. You'll just put one foot in front of the other and get your child to where they need to be. There will be time, and I think that's going to be in our third segment of kind of talking about some of the things that the family needs to do as a parent, as a sibling, as a support person. You really do need to take some space and really clean house of your own.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's so important. But the time is not during the decision making and the transitioning the child to a place of safety. Keep focused on the safety of the family system.
Yeah.
And I can't say that enough, because there will be a lot of things that you're going to be forced to compartmentalize. Put that in a box. We promise we will come back to that box, but you've got to put it in the box and close it for now. I would say that for Aiden, at the point that he is trying to get me to back down and I'm like, I love you and that's why we're doing this, he then all but destroyed our guest room. There was well then, if you're going to send me, then let me leave you with a parting gift.
The tears didn't work, so now the anger comes in, which often I explain to parents. I'm like, you're going to get multiple different tactics to show you, like, I don't want to change. This is too hard. This is uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so at the point where I now know that he's going to do whatever he can, so I'll flip the script, and I started making incentives. So he got a cool sweatshirt that cost some obscene amount of money at the airport if he did all the things he had to do to get to the airport. And then I don't even know what we promised him if we got to the plane and boarded the plane without any drama and trauma. So there was an incredible amount of bribery, if you want to call it that. There was a lot of incentivizing and a lot of rewarding of very basic compliance, because at that point, again, what's the goal? The goal is to get to a place of safety. It doesn't matter what it's going to cost at this point. If it's $100 sweatshirt, if it's a 3 donuts because you get one for boarding and one for getting off the plane, I don't care.
We just get on the plane,
because we just need to get there, right? Yeah. And I think that's again, I know that I definitely faced some criticism for how I was physically ushering him to the program, and I was like, I don't think the sugar content matters right now. And he was diabetic, and of course I don't want to say that lightly. But the 3 donuts that it took to get him to the program were less harmful than, God forbid, something catastrophic happening between home and a flight and a 2-hour car drive to get to the program, right? So keep your eye on the ball. Get your child to a place of safety.
Well, so you've mentioned a couple things. Like, first of all, it's super scary to send your kid away. Yet it got to a point where safety and their well-being and your well-being and everyone's mental health was at risk. And so no longer safe at home, no longer had the structure, and things were not working at home. So then you started to look outside. And I think a lot of parents have this fear of sending their kid away. Like, they don't want to leave the state. They don't want to send their kid out of state. What made you look at, were you going to it sounds like a state at this point?
So at the point, yeah. So great question. Some states are more rich with resources than others, though.
Maryland was not one of them.
Maryland is not one of them. And in general, the nation is lacking. So to both ed consultants that we worked with, I was explicit in saying that geography was not going to be a consideration. So for me, finding the right program was the only goal.
But how'd you get there? Because a lot of parents aren't there. They want to find someplace close that they can go visit their child that same day. Like, leaving the state is hard for a lot of parents.
But sending your child to the wrong program is damaging. It's worse, right? And so landing your child in the wrong program could potentially be more damaging than not sending them away at all. Which, at the point that a parent is considering it, you've run out of options. So you now know that you need to send your child. And I've heard this a lot. It needs to be within driving distance, or, I have other children to consider. Your other children are unsafe right now. So why don't we put things in perspective? And I think triage, prioritization, if you're a list person, write it out. Sometimes it's easier to see. Safety is always at the top of the list. It's always number one. So when you start putting comfort somewhere there, it's easy to see it when it's on a piece of paper. Like, yeah, but it's comfort versus safety. Yeah. Right. And so for us, it was very much geography. And I think if you can break it down to yourself, whether you're going to get on a plane for a 2-hour flight or a 6-hour flight, does it really matter? Yeah. It is not comfortable for me to come from the East Coast to Utah every few weeks for multiple years. But finding the right program, and here we are today with the results, I would do it over again. I would have flown farther if that was where we needed to go, because proximity was so short term. Yeah, it was uncomfortable. And yes, it cost us a boatload of money. And I have my kid who's alive and safe and thriving. So I think you've got to define the goal, and the goal is safety. And if you can stay on that, it will help dispel some of what we think are priorities. But when you measure them against safety, they're really not. So we started in North Carolina. We then went to Texas, and we then landed in Utah. Okay. And each program was imperative to the moment. North Carolina was the wrong program, and so we ended up sort of stopping in at we had a 3-week stay in a short-term psychiatric system called Copestone that I cannot say enough good things about. By far, the best psychiatric system I've had the pleasure of working with, from doctors to technicians to tech support. They were phenomenal. They were borrowing resources from geriatric to sit with me while I was just in a pile in a corner, right? There was just no limit to what they were going to do to support our family.
Awesome.
Through a really traumatic
So a stabilization place.
So we stabilized in North Carolina.
Okay.
And when I tell you, his dad and I were alternating every other day. We had to be there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday.
Oh my goodness.
And sure enough, there was a parent there on every Tuesday, every Thursday, and every Saturday. And so that in itself was a huge burden on our families. And then we moved to Texas, to Liberty Hill, Texas. And that was 5.5 months. And it's during COVID, and you're scheduling a visit, and then there's an outbreak, and so then we have to cut it off, and we're going to schedule for next week. We got to be COVID free before, right? Like the unit kept getting COVID, and then here our super spreader was just phenomenal, and so you roll with the punches, because again, what's the priority? Safety. Everything else is so extra.
But in regards to safety, I think parents are scared to send their kid away because they're worried about, will my kid be safe? Is the program trustworthy? There's scenes in the media and on the news that I think sometimes can be exaggerated. A lot can be true, but there are some times where people want to click on the alarming things. They want to click on, that's what gets the attention, is those big dramatic stories. And I'm just going to give this side example of there's, a couple plane crashes, yet generally flying in an airplane is really safe. But because there aren't very often, those are going to get a lot of attention and the media, right? And I think it's the same for our industry in residential. Yes, there are those incidences where kids haven't, been safe. But generally speaking, there's hundreds, thousands more that have gotten the help like you guys and telling their story. And we don't hear enough of those stories, which I'm so glad you guys came on to share that story. So going back, my question is, how do you know he was going to be safe in a program?
Yeah. So you can research all day long. And I think in general, you need to take what you're reading with a grain of salt. If it's written by a child who was just discharged, odds are they don't see the benefit yet. If it's written by a child who is not an upstanding citizen, who never fully recovered for the reason they were sent, right? And so they're still sort of stuck in that rut, and they're writing the review from the rut. Again, consider the source. If you're it's tougher, it's less sexy to find a success story. When Aiden was discharged from Meridel, one of the first things I did was write a review. And the reason for that was that no one does. You forget to do that. We were celebrating the fact that he had graduated from this elementary program. He was considered stable now, and we were ready to move on to Discovery Ranch. But saying thanks is so often forgotten in all things, right? Not just online reviews. And it's so important to remember to tell the success story, because it is not sexy. It is not appreciated. It's going to get less clicks. But for the parent looking for their next program, I have served as a resource to all the programs that Aiden has attended, because I am happy to tell them about my experience. I'm happy to tell them about the phone calls that you're going to get that will rip your heart to shreds and make it hard to sleep. And it's not because your child's not safe. It's because they want to come home no less than you want to hold them. I wanted to put my child to bed. I wanted to wake up in the morning and wake him up. I wanted to give him his meds. I wanted to make breakfast. All of these things were so real. And so I'm going through my own mourning process, and my own heart is being ripped out, right? Like my arm was across the country. It's hard to function. And so it can get very mixed up with the child who's tugging on your heartstrings in their own way to try, what can I do to trigger mom to finally say enough is enough, we're coming home.
Yeah.
So this
is hard. I don't want to be under scrutiny. I don't want to be held accountable. I don't want to change.
I don't want to change.
Change is hard. It's painful. You're not sending them away to a day spa, you know,
Right.
and do some fun adventure. This is hard work.
And so I would say to parents is buckle up. Buckle up, accept the fact that the child's going to try to manipulate you some more. They're very good at it. They did not get here by mistake. They have perfected the art of manipulation. And also plug into the program. I think I've experienced parents who approach the program as sort of like a demanding customer. And I'm not really sure where that entitlement comes from. Rather, you need to participate and be part of the program. So go to parent days, go on the visits they're asking you to come. You want to see the program? Go out there.
That was my question. I've been trying to get to it.
Yeah, I have.
Did you visit the programs?
All the time?
Why?
Not before he went, because there's just not enough time.
Okay.
The timing is so critical.
Yeah.
We were offered to go visit the Utah programs before, right? Because we were coming out of Meridell, so he was safe and he was already stabilized. We didn't feel the need, but we did do online interviews. Aiden got to interview them. Aiden got to do on camera. He met with children, like students. He met with staff. They didn't end the interview process until we said we were sort of done. They were like, would you like to talk to more students? Would you like to talk to more staff? Would you like to talk to more therapists? Every program we have been part of has been fully transparent in who would you like to talk to? I suspect if we had asked to talk to the chef, they would have done that too. Aiden was diabetic. We needed to know that there were going to be certain accommodations for that. And so we discussed that before, just making sure that, hey, if they were, at Meridell, they use soda on Friday nights. If you had a good week, you got soda and pizza on Friday night. They did not, they checked with their provider. They were unable to get diet soda in those single bottles. No problem. Walmart delivered cases of soda every fourth Friday to Meridell, and that was his soda.
Yeah.
They worked with us. It wasn't, bring the questions. These are people who want to help you and your family, but don't demand it. It is not their job to go find your child diet soda. They will work with you, they will try, and then when they couldn't make it happen with their current provider, no, they do not need to change their delivery service because they can't get it. Just make it happen. Or, we did the same thing for snacks, like for treats. They couldn't really facilitate the nuts, right? And that was kind of the safest snack that we can do for Aiden's diabetes, which was completely out of control at the time. And so Walmart delivered to Meridell quite a bit, and they would just let us know what they needed. We found, the Atkins M&Ms, the peanut M&Ms. There are solutions. Work with the program. Don't demand from the program, but be part of the solution.
So you're saying you guys really scouted out the program, you interviewed, you even things that you needed, such as snacks and things like that. Like, you were able to work with the program to make it feel like your child was getting these things that were important to you, and that he was safe, and that you weren't, like, home wasn't safe. So you needed to take this next, measure of sending him out of state somewhere to people you didn't know. But yet you did your homework. You did your research to make sure that he was safe and he could move forward and heal.
It goes beyond the research, though. I think I can't stress it enough. You need to be part of the program every single moment.
You can't just send him away and kick back.
You need to go there as often as they're asking you to go there, or maybe even more, offer to go. You need to, when there were moments of crisis, I dropped everything and went. And there was a particular phone call that required all things to stop. And I just boarded a plane and came out here. So you need to know that you're still the child's parent. Nobody alleviated you of any responsibility. That's your kid. You cooked it, or you bought it, or you adopted it. You now need to own it. And part of owning that is also owning your own stuff. And we all contribute to our family system, especially as a parent. We are the leaders of the family system. Yeah. And when the system is failing, or when the system is broken, the leadership needs to step up. And part of being the parent and being courageous in this process is saying, I probably played a part in this, and I need to really unpack my own stuff as well. And I love that Clinton likes to talk about the puzzle piece and the puzzle. Mm-hmm. We are a puzzle. Every family unit is a puzzle. And when we send one puzzle piece away to be reshaped, the whole puzzle needs to be reshaped, or the child won't have a place to fit back home. And if you don't do that, then the child will have no choice but to go back to the old shape to fit back in.
Like there was one piece of advice. I mean, I moved to a different state actually after, like we moved to a different state in this case, but like my mom did this when that wasn't the plan, but she got it. There was an advice that was given to her of when you graduate, when the kid leaves treatment, make sure that their room, like try to restructure their room and make it look different, because that will allow them to, there's some kind of like mental thing with it of not jumping back into old habits, seeing that, oh yeah, I have the same room. And then
so the whole environment's different.
Right, the whole environment, making the environment different.
What were your biggest fears or concerns about leaving home?
I think it was just missing out, not being part of all these family experiences, especially like, it's important and it made me feel somewhat involved, and then like it would hit me sometimes of, dang, I missed that, when you get pictures and stuff, like I missed my older brother's high school graduation.
Oh yeah,
I was super happy for him at first, and I'm just like, I wish I was there, kind of thing. Like, so stuff like that, like you miss these things, and at first you feel like happy for them, and then you feel like, dang it, like it's like stuff like that. So I think missing out on like big moments, especially like surrounding like immediate family and stuff, and being there. So
about that. So
yeah,
I think in preparing for some of the things that can be overwhelming as a parent is, oh my God, I'm sending my child away. And so, some of the things that I talked about, like not putting him to bed, not making breakfast for him,
missing
right?
holidays.
Yeah. But part of being plugged in, Aiden got mail almost daily, right? Mm-hmm. So weekly I was doing Walgreens photo dumps. I would print out the pictures from that week.
Oh my God.
And
I had like
send
a
them.
Pillowcase of pictures.
And we would write on the back of them what they were, right? If it was a funny picture of the dog and the dog had just run away with someone's underwear, or, like whatever it would be, we would write little captions for each picture, or most pictures, when we were getting together as family. My whole family gets together at least once a year. So doing that and printing the pictures, writing the letters, he got more mail probably than all the kids combined.
I would say he probably did.
Yeah, my brother sent mail at least weekly. I sent mail at least bi-weekly. And I was constantly recruiting family members to, my nieces and nephews were making pictures, and my siblings were writing letters and sending just photos. Like, guys, just print photos off your phone and send them.
So let me ask you this, Aiden, getting all these pictures and knowing you're missing out on these scenes, did it make you feel like you didn't want to do therapy, or did it motivate you to want to do therapy so you could get back to this stuff?
I think it was like, it would send me down this rabbit hole, and my therapist would try to be like, then get the heck out of here.
Okay.
Work to get out of here so you can be in those pictures.
Well, that's the biggest thing when I work with parents who are bringing their child to a place. It's like, oh, but we have their birthday coming, or Christmas, or Hanukkah, or whatever, any important holiday. They're so worried, like maybe we'll wait till after the holiday to admit them.
I think there's, again, hold safety at the front and center. I think if we can just spend 30 seconds defining safety,
yeah, please do.
Because it's so misused sometimes. So first of all, in most cases, I think physical safety is actually at risk, right? Whether the child is a danger to themselves or others, and others. I think that in most cases, in most families that I've interacted with, that's the point we're at, right? And then you need to also consider the physical and then emotional and mental safety of the others in the family. If there were one thing that I could do different, it would have been to consider sending Aiden away sooner, because he needed the help. And I was so determined to try to do this myself and to keep it at home and to avoid the failure of not being able to do this at home, that I was probably 9 to 12 months late in the process. And there was a tremendous amount of trauma that was endured by all of us during that 9 to 12 months that could have been avoided had we started our journey in long-term, in residential treatment earlier. And so the person to sort of highlight that to me was actually our pediatrician. She said to me, have you considered the other children? And I recently talked to a mother of 4 whose third child has destroyed their home and family. And I said, have you considered what this is doing to your other children? And she's like, oh my God, they're suffering. And so sometimes we just need that wake up call, and just, you need to take inventory. You're the leader of this organization called your family. And when we talk about safety, I think we need to consider, of course, physical first, and then emotional and mental safety of everybody in the unit. And if there's a problem there, the discussion has to now pivot to how we come back to safety. So food preferences, or whether you're going to have your favorite linen, or, whether the child's going to participate in Christmas. How about think of this? Maybe you'll have this Christmas, but will the child be around for the ones to follow?
You took it right. That's a conversation to have.
That's a conversation you have to have.
Well, it's two ways. It's, yes, I loved how you explained safety, because safety puts things in perspective of, does this Christmas matter or not? And there's often times where I have families who wait till after a holiday, and the holiday goes terribly wrong because they waited too long, and some big event ends up happening because they just wanted to have this perfect looking, family and holiday, but in reality, that's not where they're at. And there's crisis and trauma and things going on, and people aren't safe in various ways.
I think, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a great way to look at it is almost like, like the fives, like, but like, I think you gotta obviously expand that five maybe a little bit.
Can you explain the fives?
So it's like, usually it's with a smaller situation of 5 minutes, 5 weeks, 5 months, but like, I would think may have to expand it just a little bit of 5 months, 5 years.
You can do anything in 5 minutes kind of thing.
Gotcha. It's gonna matter in 5 weeks. It's gonna matter in 5 months. It's gonna matter in 5 years. Like when they're home, like depending on obviously your situation of what your treatment situation is, it might not matter in 5 weeks because they might already be home if it's a shorter term because they only needed a short term, or it might not matter in 5 months because, again, it might have been a mid-term kind of thing. Or it might not matter in 5 years because they've been home for 3 now.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately what I was trying to get at is that they may miss this one holiday because of safety and choices that have been made, right? But yet, by sending them away and getting them help, they're going to gain all these other holidays back that will be better. Mm-hmm. Or if they don't, they may lose out on those holidays, right?
Before you can even realize that, it's so hard to realize that because you first have to detach yourself and not in the sense of, okay, I don't want to see them because otherwise I'm going to freak out. But you got to detach yourself from this, like my mom said, I want to put them to bed, but I can't. Obviously, I can't. Detaching yourself from those things you want with them and being like, all right, I need to detach so they can reattach. And I think that's so important before you can even be like, what about the next Christmas? What about the next Hanukkah? What about whatever holiday you celebrate?
Yeah, I think I would maybe use, instead of detach, compartmentalize, because there is a place for mourning that 100%. And I went through moments of sort of, I need to shut the world out and I just need to be in the pain so I can feel it, process it, and then be most productive. And so there is a time for that, but it's not in the crisis. So put it in a box. You can come back to it. And
Absolutely.
You can come back to it in a few minutes, but you
should come
through
back
the crisis.
To it.
Exactly. Yeah. I will share that we have not had our 4 children at home together since before Aiden went to treatment in September of 21. And and mostly because our kids are in college and none of the breaks have overlapped. And even holidays, we break them up because they have other parents to do it with. So we did Christmas with these 2 and we did Christmas with those 2, and it didn't happen. And so we will all be together for the first time since 2021 to celebrate Aiden's high school graduation.
That's awesome.
And I will share that in September of 2021, in the moment of making the decision to send him away, it was either that or he was going to end up dead or in jail. I knew, for him, there was nowhere else we were going. We were headed in a bad path, and one was final and one was likely just as final and involved a lot of concrete. And so to me, the fact that we haven't been together in almost 4 years, it sucked. it's not how we wanted to do our holidays, but here we are, and we're planning this phenomenal weekend to celebrate a huge milestone. But for us, the milestone is so much bigger than just Aiden being home, being successful, graduating high school. It's also kind of coming back full circle, and our family has healed to the point where everyone's going to be together. And so sometimes you just need to believe in the process, take that leap, prioritize safety, and then let go.
I just want to end there.
I think that
I don't have anything else. That was so beautiful to bring it around full circle, because initially you didn't know if he was going to even graduate. You didn't know if your family could be together, right? Because I think there's something to point out to our parents and our listeners, is that there's this ideal kind of fantasy that you want this family, you want this connection, when in reality, like you were talking about, Aiden, this compartmentalizing, like realizing like that's not the reality. And allowing yourself eventually to mourn that loss. You had this idea of what you hope for in your family and your future, and you wake up and realize this is not it. I'm completely somewhere else, and you have to mourn. You have to process that loss and process the hopes of who your child was gonna be and who they are currently. Yet I love the message that you have, that once you were able to do this and you took the necessary steps to find him safety, to find him help, to find him the support that he needed, to find your family the support you needed, that there is hope, there is healing, and your family can come back together, and you can have those milestones, and you can have those moments where you're all connected and you're getting maybe not the son you thought you'd have and the family you thought you'd have, but maybe something better, I'd even say. Is that fair to say? Or?
I would say that's pretty fair. Like, obviously, it's sad that we haven't all been together since 2021, but like my stepfather's emphasized a lot. I actually have a better relationship with my stepsisters than I ever have. So I would say, like, yeah, I think you do get something better from it, because instead of settling, you decide to take the harder path, do the smart thing by working harder.
Yeah.
And you get this even better product.
We are 100% better for the process we have been through.
Which, stay tuned, listeners. We're going to actually talk about what that process was like in our next episode. You guys, thank you so much for coming on here, being vulnerable, helping our listeners hear maybe not the sexy story of, the terrible thing that happened, but more the success, the healing, the process. And I'm hearing that it takes work. It's not easy. And we're going to touch on that, because I think our listeners and our parents need to hear that if you go down this road, it is not Disneyland. It is not easy work. No, and it's worth it. Mm-hmm. It's better than Disneyland for our Disneyland lovers.
Magic Mountain comes after.
So thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned. In our next episode, we're going to talk about the experience life in residential treatment. What was that like, and what should parents expect? So thank you again.